And we are in 2019 for the third edition of PIXERF Talks. It's an interesting one, this one. We're speaking to a young man called Sal Lavallo, dubbed one of the youngest people in the world to have traveled to 193 countries. So just to give you an idea, we only have 193 countries, which means he's traveled to every country in the world. Which means also some of the most dangerous places like the south of Sudan, Kabul, in even Yemen, which you'll find out later. He has quite an interesting story to tell, and we wanted to sit him down because we found this story unique. He has sort of defined himself not just as a person behind a lens taking photos, but a person who's traveled so much to so many countries, and each photo has a story that he tells. It's either a theme, it's either an experience, or it's just him sharing his thoughts on the places that he has visited. So sit back, relax. It's quite an interesting one. From him leaving Indiana, owning a farm in Tanzania, converting to Islam, hairy moments in dangerous countries. It's going to be an enjoyable one. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast. Thank you. Hello?
Hey, yeah, I think it works.
Oh, good, because the last time I tried this with Brendan, we were like 40 minutes in and there was nothing.
Oh, wow, that's awful.
That's a long time. Yeah, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you? It's been a while.
I know it's been, when did we meet? November 24th at the IOA.
Yeah, exactly.
And then briefly in a club.
Yes. When you were with all of your Hadramautis.
Yes, that's the strangest thing in the world to meet so many of my fellow countrymen on one day.
I just posted a video about Yemen, actually.
I know, actually. I think I saw it about 3 days ago, or was it last week? I can't remember.
Nice.
And you're talking about how you from Oman and then you want to go to Yemen.
Yeah.
But okay, the first question, as somebody who is from Yemen, is why would you want to go to Yemen?
Well, I had to go to every country.
Okay, how was it? So the last time I was in Yemen was in 2004, I think.
I imagine it was better then. I mean, I think that there's, like, I was only able to see, like, which is, like, the extreme east.
Okay.
And, you know, so I didn't get to see, like, all the historical cities of, like, Aden and Sana'a, or Sayun or anything.
Yeah.
But it was, like, I mean, it was, like, beautiful, like, enough. Like, it was, like, mountains and ocean, and then we went in the desert for a few hours, like for 20 hours, just, like, driving. I think it's just like such a hard time for the place right now, so you can't really expect much.
It's a Yemen. When I was there, I went down south, nearer to the coast, which is where my hometown is. Not quite peaceful. Not a lot to do, if you really think about it, because if you're there for a week, especially if you live in a city for most of your life, it can be quite a culture shock. I actually never lived in Yemen. I was born there. And then I came to Singapore, I think when I was 2 years old.
Yeah, so Yemen is definitely not Singapore.
No, it is not. You had a few hairy moments there in Yemen, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was just like not, so I don't consider myself in any way to be like an adventurer, and I only will go to places when I am certain that I can do so safely.
Okay.
And I'm not interested in like war zones or everything. And I kind of got misled with Yemen.
Isn't Yemen still in sort of a war zone kind of situation?
Yeah, so it isn't, but like most of that happening, like the fighting between like the coalition forces and the Houthis is in like the populated areas in the west, so like Sana'a and Aden and like Hudaydah. But I was in the east, which is mostly now controlled by Emirati military, and so it's pretty peaceful. But you know, so I was still kind of, the guy that I went with, you know, he used to be a tour guide, and I think he just like hasn't had a tourist in a long time, and so was trying to get as much money out of me with the least amount of like protection.
I actually was listening to your video, and you met 3 guys on the way back that came to Yemen to hunt.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I think what's like, everyone always forgets that like normal life continues in all these places. Like I went to a wedding in Syria, I went to nightclubs in South Sudan, like I went, on a boat ride in Kabul. Like all of these things, people are like, what? Like, you mean you didn't just stay inside and like be afraid? They're like, no, because people have to exist, like
I know, but I think why they're surprised is because, well, you're a Caucasian man in a place like Kabul, for example, where they see you as the enemy, and being outside and being active. And what do you do in Kabul? You want a boat ride?
Yeah, like we did, like we went on like a swan boat, like one where you pedal, like the boat is shaped like it's just like this like silly photo, like you would never think of this as.
How come I did not see that in your Google Drive?
There are a lot of photos of that. I mean,
there are a lot of photos of you, and as I realized when I spoke to you during the competition, you said that the pictures that got the most engagements were the one with you in it, right?
True. Oh yeah, and I sent you the press folder, which is only photos of me.
No, it's good. It's good. I think we found some gems that we can definitely talk about. But I think we can get into that later. So how the podcast is going to work is we'll just do our conversation here, and then later on I will just voice over an introduction to you.
Okay.
And then we'll just take it from I think minute 1, but we'll just edit some stuff out. I mean, the stuff that isn't really necessary. But yeah, man, thanks, man, for agreeing to this. Connecting with a humble startup like PIXERF to talk about your adventures. So you are one of the youngest people to visit 193 countries. Not the youngest. I think I've asked you this before.
Yeah. So I mean, no, it depends what you define as visit, right? So like there's a couple people who have only visited airports and counted that. I think I'm the youngest person who's like entered every single country, but I don't care to like fight with anybody about their claim. So I'll just call myself one of the youngest.
28 years old. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, I finished when I was 27, but now I'm 28.
Okay, so doing some research on you, I mean, just following up to this podcast, I found out some very interesting things about you. Like, one is you own a small farm in Tanzania.
Yep, that's true. That is true.
How did you get to own a small farm in Tanzania, one place?
So I used to run a small NGO, and our first project was in this village called Mangula in central Tanzania, and I just fell in love with the place, and I returned a year after the project to see how the project was going, and to see my friends, and I realized I wanted something to keep me coming back, like to draw me back rather than just coming to see friends, but something that like some responsibility. And so I thought I would either build a house or buy a farm. And I felt like the farm could be more impactful. So I don't take any profit from the farm. It's entirely done by my friends there. And it's just like a good excuse to like have to go back every year.
What do you grow on the farm?
We have rice, cassava, and some bananas.
Okay, nice. So it kind of feeds. So who does it feed?
I mean, so the rice is sold, and then the bananas are like mostly for the farmers themselves. Like, it's not enough quantity to be sold, and the cassava is sold in the village.
Okay, so reading up about Tanzania, I also came across the village of Mangula. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Mangula.
That is where you converted to Islam.
Yep. Also, so in 2013, I converted there, in a small mosque lit by a single candle. It's really kind of picturesque.
So you decided to, I know we're not going to go too much into this, but you decided to convert to Islam. How did that journey come about?
So basically, I grew up Catholic, and my parents and the culture around me was very much about like being inquisitive and questioning and like thinking a lot about this stuff, and like if you disagree, like that's okay. And so as I got older and I was exposed to different religions, like there were some things that I began to disagree with in Catholicism and then in Christianity. And so for a while I was just doing my own thing, praying a lot and being spiritual, but not like with any like specific religion. And then I was still being very inquisitive and being exposed to like Hinduism, Judaism, like Zoroastrianism, like Buddhism, everything. But once I started getting more of an understanding of Islam, it felt more like the answers that I had come to on my own. And so what happened in the village is that I was with a village elder, and he asked me, because I would go on Friday to mosque with them and I would go on Sunday to church. And so he said, what do you actually believe? And so I said, well, these are the things I believe. And he said, okay, then you're a Muslim. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you just told us the 5 tenets of Islam.
Really?
And so, yeah, so it was like I had naturally come to, I didn't say pray 5 times a day. I said to be in constant prayer. And I didn't say go on a pilgrimage to Mecca. I said that there should be like moments in our lives where we unite together, and like through journey. And I didn't say zakat. I said like we should be caring for other people. But yeah, it was, and since then it's been the best thing in my life.
How did that? So you converted to Islam in 2013. Were you still traveling across the world after that?
Yes. So I spent after I converted, I worked for 3 years as a strategy consultant, but I was traveling a lot during that, and then I took 2.5 years to full-time travel. And so yeah, most of the travels was after the conversion.
Okay, so just curious question: how did your conversion to Islam kind of influence or change or just affect your outlook on every country you visited?
I think that, so travel is really important in Islam. So travel in itself is actually mentioned 27 times in the Quran. So,
27 times?
Yeah, so it's more than most everything. Like, so we're told to go and look at God's wonders, right? It says like this, go and see what I created for you. The Quran also says to call somebody like unlearned, it will say, does he not travel? Right, so it talks about travel as like learning, and it even like forces us to travel. It says go and travel, like very directly. It says go travel and see the world. So I think that like travel is really important in Islam, because Islam is about the world and about like the connections that we all have. And so I think there's a lot about being a guest and appreciating new things and seeing the beauty and seeing God and everything. And then it's also, Islam is really important in being a host. So like most of like the Muslim majority countries are the most hospitable, because it's so important in Islam to be gracious towards a guest. So that was always lovely to go to those countries and be welcomed as a brother.
That's for sure. That's, I think, one of the tenets. Was it interesting, or how was the reaction of people when you went to Yemen, Afghanistan, and you told them that you were a Muslim man? Of course, when they first saw you, they would never have guessed it.
I think what's interesting is that Islam is probably the most flexible religion in the world, in terms of there's so many different cultures practicing it in so many different countries, and it takes on so many different forms, and yet each individual one likes to think that it's the correct one. And so oftentimes you'll have people say, oh, you're Muslim but you do this, or like you're and so that's kind of like it. I loved it because I was able to see all the different forms that Islam takes, but sometimes they would be like, oh, but you don't do this. Like, everybody would like to give me input on how I should change.
Yep. A lot of people like to do that. They basically like to nitpick on other people's behaviors, but never look at their own. Yeah, it's very sad. Okay, let's riding on this spirituality thing. Last week, the Pope came to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, that was really exciting.
And you were there, right? So, can you tell me a little bit on how that felt? Was it his first ever visit to Abu Dhabi?
Yes, so it was the Pope's first ever visit to the Arabian Peninsula. So he's never been to any of the countries in the Gulf. And 2019 is the UAE's year of tolerance. And so this whole year, we are all about like bridging the divides between all the different societies that exist within the UAE. And about 10% of our population, about 1 million people, are Catholic. So the Pope coming was, and also the Pope represents so much unity and interfaith dialogue and everything. So it's a really, really momentous occasion for him to be here. It was the single largest event ever that the UAE had, because there's 130,000 people in and around the stadium. And so it was just really beautiful to like have a mass here and to like celebrate like this part of our population, and to kind of to show that we can connect with one another, and that being a Muslim country doesn't mean that we don't have like Christians, and like that we don't need to respect them. So it was a beautiful mass. It was great to see so many people, and it was like an awesome event.
I'm just wondering, has any mufti or religious leader or like king of any, like the king of Saudi, has he ever been to the Vatican?
Yeah, so our rulers have been to the Vatican.
Yeah.
Even Sheikh Zayed, like our founding father, he went to the Vatican in like the 50s or the 60s. So it's a pretty common thing, like especially the past couple, like John Paul II, who was the Pope as I was growing up, after him Benedict XVI, and now Francis, like they have been very much about interfaith dialogue. So there's a lot of friendship between the communities.
I mean, the funny thing is, like, that's what I see that's missing in Asia, especially in like the peninsular countries of Malaysia, Indonesia, and there's a lot of separatism within religion. Like, this is my part of Malaysia, this is your part of Malaysia. We are secular, but we are not secular. I think that kind of dialogue and interfaith celebration is very important to get to basically progressing thought and getting people to stop thinking, I don't know, 200 years back, and like, you know, looking to the future and just maybe even achieving world peace. Who knows?
Exactly. I mean, humans are all about, like, why religion can be such a destructive force is that it's so important. It's like the most important thing to so many people. So like for me, like the most important thing in my life is my relationship with God. And so obviously I would want to share these, like if you like a certain kind of food, you want to show it to your friends, right?
Yeah.
If you like us, so if you get so much out of religion, you want to show that with other people. But to like force somebody, or to like you know, you have to, I think there needs to be more of an understanding that people can get to the same destination in different ways, right? So if someone feels really close to God but they practice Christianity, then I don't feel like I need to like, that's not my place to tell them that they're wrong or anything. And actually what you end up learning is that there's so much that you can share. You know, like a Muslim can talk to a Christian about God and connect on you know 90% of it.
Okay, yeah, that's really beautiful. And so I think this is a great segue to get into the topic and the theme of the podcast. So we are talking about people who have successfully defined themselves in their chosen medium. And for the respect of this podcast, I think we're gonna put Instagram as your chosen medium. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess that I am not the biggest of Instagrammers, but it's fun to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're one of the most unique. I think with a lot of people using Instagram for a plethora of reasons, there is just a lot of clutter, and to find somebody that has a unique approach to their photos on Instagram. So you basically say that you're not a photographer, but somebody who travels and takes pretty pictures.
Yeah, I like to say that I don't take pretty pictures. I just go pretty places. You know, so it's quite easy to take a photo that's beautiful when you're standing in front of a beautiful like mountain, you know. But
man, you'd be surprised if you put a camera in my hand, you get some really horrible photos. So you got to know the basics of composition, lighting, you know. or else you wouldn't have 40,000 followers, would you?
Well, I think it's also like about what are you saying with it, right?
The story behind it, correct?
Yeah, like what is the yeah, exactly, like what is the point, I guess, and like what do you want the audience to understand? Like if you just want them to see something beautiful, then there's a way to do that. If you want to make them think, there's a different way. With Instagram, it's kind of cool because you can use the caption. Not everybody reads it, but like you have some space to write alongside it and kind of explain something.
You have a lot of space for it, actually. I'm looking at one of your posts when you were in Morocco. Real talk privilege. We need to be aware of our privilege.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I think that it's a very quick place for people to go to when they see me as like a young white man traveling through the world, that it's pretty obvious that I'm incredibly privileged. And I think that right now in this world, that's like such a hot issue, and there's not enough people admitting to that. And there's not enough, there's a lot of people who aren't, who don't have all of these identities, who are like fighting to get the representation, get the privilege, but there's not enough people who have those identities saying like, yes, it's true, you know? And I think it's kind of, what's interesting about travel is that it's being able to travel is a privilege, and yet traveling teaches you so much about privilege. It shows you the haves and the have-nots. It shows you the hierarchies around the world. And so I just wanted to be very clear that I understand and I acknowledge it, and that I'm also like working in it. I mean, this is like literally what my degree in university was in identity. So I'm not ignorant to the topic. And also just to say like, yeah, like you're right. It is, you know, I am blessed to have been able to do all of this stuff. Like I get it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm looking through your Instagram. Man, you got some beautiful shots. Could I request the shot of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
Yeah. So unless it's under license,
Nice.
I think that one would be great for the blog post. Yeah, I think that's it. So one of the things I realized is there is a story behind, or like a post behind every image that you put up, and you talk about some serious issues, you talk about some lighthearted issues, and you talk about, you know, your journey towards each country, which I think you actually take the time out to actually write that stuff, which makes it interesting because it's not just a collection of pretty photos. It's also a story behind some of the countries, some of the more dangerous countries you've been to, like the South Sudan, which I had no idea you could go to.
Yeah. Yeah, you shouldn't. Maybe you can.
How did you get into the Sudan?
So Sudan is easy. You just get a visa. South Sudan's a little bit, or it used to be more complicated. Now it's a little bit safer. There's been a couple like peace agreements signed lately, so they're more accepting of tourists. But before, I mean, ever since its independence in July 2011, it's been constant like warfare, especially outside of the city. I went to the embassy in Kenya and I talked to the consul general and I expressed my desire to go, and I said that I'm not a journalist, I'm not like an ignorant tourist, I'm not like trying to be exploitative in any way. I just want to see it, and like just like I've seen every other country. And he gave me the visa and let me go. So that was very lucky.
Do you feel nervous going around places like South Sudan or Kabul or Raqqa? Have you been to Raqqa?
No, I haven't been to Raqqa.
So you've been to Iraq, right?
Yeah, I've been to Iraq and Syria, and I think that it's like I always find the safest way possible to go to these places. So I think that, you know, we can always be afraid of anything, right? Like in you know, I grew up in America, and there was 350 mass shootings in America last year. So does that mean that everybody should always be afraid every day in America? Like, no. But you know, we need to take the precautions that are necessary, and you know, it's also about reacting positively if something does happen.
Well, I wouldn't be afraid going to America. I'd just be a bit nervous going through the airport with my name. I'm telling you, man. It isn't random because my friend is Pakistani. He gets checked every time, and he's a Singaporean citizen. Like
I get checked
random
every
check. You, Sal Lavallo? Come on.
Well, I should though. Look at my passport.
What does it say?
It says that I've been to Yemen and that I've been to
How many
everywhere.
how many passports do you have?
It took me
I'm
6.
pretty sure
to get,
that fills up pretty fast.
Yeah, it took me 6 to get to every country, and then I've used an additional 2 since then.
Okay, any country that you would go back to in a heartbeat? I think I've asked you this before.
There's, I mean, so many of them. I love the UAE. It's where I live, and I always love to see it. My number one desire is Japan because it was the first country I ever went to in 2004, and I haven't been back since then, which is crazy.
Do you have a picture of Japan that you can send me?
I don't, not of me, because I was 13, so I don't know where maybe.
Okay. So this was before you quit NIU to travel the world.
Yeah, it was when I was a kid.
Okay, all right, nice. You have also a very nice picture of Kurdistan here.
Yeah, which one? Am I in it? Is there like a flag?
No, you're not in it. You're not in it. It's like a lot of sheep, a very narrow river, mountain landscape in the horizon, and a sort of a landslide kind of small hill on the right.
Yeah, so you want Saudi and then Kurdistan sheep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
How was Kurdistan?
I thought it was amazing. So I was actually kind of nervous to go there just because I wasn't aware of anything, and the Mosul offensive had started like a week before I arrived. And then when I landed, like we loved it so much that I extended my trip. Like I was supposed to be there 6 days, and I stayed for 10. And like we had the best guide, this guy Karwan. He like showed us everything. Like it's such a diverse place. There's Christians, there's Muslims, there's Jewish sites, there's Yazidis. There's so much, and then it's also such a important historical spot in terms of, there was the genocide during the Iran-Iraq war, and now with
the Kurds,
ISIS. Yeah, and so it's just there's a lot to like think about in that region. So it's fascinating.
So there's no Airbnb in these places. So where would you put up in 10 days?
So I've been really, really lucky because I went to international boarding school, and then I
see.
Yeah, so I've worked for international companies. So I stayed with friends in like 78 countries, then in a lot, like for example in Iraq though, I stayed in a hotel, like like a random hotel, and then same in like South Sudan, but like Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, I was in a friend's house.
Okay. There is a picture of a one-armed girl in blue in Kabul, Afghanistan.
She's not one-armed.
Oh, okay. Sorry, because in the picture I think she's tucking her arm behind her back, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what is the story with this child?
That was just like we were driving through Kabul. We were driving up the top of this mountain, or like this hill, and we pulled to the side of the road, and she was standing. Like we pulled to the side of the road to like look down into the city, but then we saw that like this little girl was standing on top of a roof, like also looking out. And I just think there's something like so like beautiful about like gazing out into the distance. Because you wonder like, what is she thinking? And then
it's an arresting shot. It's a very arresting shot. So there's a lot of like story and mood behind it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you send me that?
Yep, I'll add it to the list.
So I have selected some images that we can talk about.
Okay.
Let's start with the North Korea one. Are you allowed to take pictures of North Korea?
Yes.
You are. So where are you here? It looks like a kind of a stadium or bunker. I don't know. What is this?
Is this in the file I sent?
Yes, North Korea 2
Okay, let me open it.
.jpg. Yeah, you're facing the camera. There's a blue building behind you with two smaller blue tent-like buildings.
Oh, that's at the DMZ, I think. Let me see. Yeah. So North Korea 2. Yeah, so that's at the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. So that's the border between North and South Korea.
Okay, all right. So how long were you in North Korea for?
I was there for a week, and I did like 2 days private and then 4 days with a group tour.
What do you mean by private? So you were on your own?
No, so in North Korea, you always have to have 2 guides with you, whether you're alone or whether you're with a group. So the Americans aren't allowed to go at all to North Korea now, but previously we were, but we weren't allowed to enter by train. So my entire group, this group of like 30 people, was entering by train, but I decided to fly early while they were on the train, and I spent 2 days like just me and the 2 guides.
Okay. Any interesting stories?
Yeah, I mean, I get like with North Korea, it's interesting because a lot of the information that we have about the place isn't necessarily wrong. It's just old. So we think of them almost as like aliens, right? And I was pretty nervous, like, will I be able to communicate with them or like become friends with anybody or like what will that be like? And which is crazy thinking like me, someone who's been to 150 countries at the time, who has met people from all over and connected with them, thinking that there would be some people I couldn't. And and really quickly, the first night, I was with my male guide, and we just started talking about the stuff that like any 2 guys would talk about, like sports and girls and making our dads proud and like when we want to have a family. And you realize like even though their life is so different, there's so many like just genuine human aspects that connect us. And so that was just amazing because even I thought they would be different, and it ends up that really in so many ways we're all the same.
It's because you're not allowed to see a lot of things in North Korea, aren't you? Like you have a specific path you can go. Like you're not really allowed to go into the, I don't know, the suburbs of North Korea and really get to the people. Am I right?
Well, so that's like an interesting part, right? Like I think that tourists think that they're a little bit more important than they actually are. And with North Korea, that like the cost to make it all, like everyone thinks, oh, they're all actors, everybody you see, like that's not true. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like that, it's not worth it for them to do that. But the perfect example of that is when I was in the private tour, I asked if I could go on a road trip. I love going by road. And I said, look, how can we go as far as we can? So we drove 3 hours to this like spa city, and we got lost. And the driver, like there was something like broken on like a bridge, and so the driver had to like go in a new way, and we kept pulling over and asking farmers like if they knew where we were and how to get like. So I arrived thinking that every step I took would be monitored. And it's true that
It wasn't.
I was always with guides, but the guides got lost, and I don't know if that's what happened, but it was cool because it's pretty obvious. Like, of course they're not like, I'm sure the car has a GPS or whatever, but they had no idea where they were going, and we got lost, and we ended up in small villages, pulling over in the town square and asking people, do you know how to get there? And nobody was trying to say that North Korea is the richest country in the world. Like they were pretty upfront about it being, a middle income or a lower middle income country. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about a place like North Korea, and that's why it's fun to travel there and kind of like see some of that. But what frustrates me a little bit is that in any situation that you're traveling, you're only seeing a specific amount, right? And even if you're somewhere for 10 years, you can't understand it fully. So sometimes you have travelers go to a place and say, oh, well, I've been there, even if it's only for a week, and they think that they know everything. But even the people who've lived there their entire lives don't know everything, So I think travelers need to be a little bit more humble.
Did you get any street food in North Korea?
I got so it was summer when I went, and I was really like it was really warm, and I kept seeing everybody walking around with like slushies and ice cream, and so I wanted one, but the guides wouldn't let me go up to the vendors and get it
Uh-huh.
because we
Uh-huh.
don't your tourists aren't allowed to use the North Korean currency, so I wouldn't have been able to pay for it. And
Okay.
so on the so I kept asking every single day, and they kept making excuses. And then finally, the last day, they bought me some.
They give you a slushy. Okay.
Yeah,
Was it good? Was it worth the wait?
it was good. Yeah, I like it was worth it just because it felt like it tasted like success, you know.
A success of a slushy.
Yeah.
Nice. I would actually would like to go to North Korea myself. I mean, I've heard so many things about it. I mean, it's just a sort of a bucket list kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would super recommend
Like
it. Like, it's interesting because some trips are for like relaxation, and some trips are for culture, and some trips are for city. And North Korea isn't any of those. It's like a separate thing. Like, what you get out of it is like the kind of like a political understanding. So it depends what you want in travel.
okay, so you've been to 193 countries. That means you've built up quite a tolerance in your stomach, I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
Well, I'm
With
sick.
all the how many times have you been sick in how many countries?
Probably 193 times. I mean, I'll eat anything, but I'm also pretty often ill.
What is the most exotic thing you've eaten and where?
I've had bat before.
Where was that?
That was in Palau in the Pacific. And what's funny about that is they do eat bat, but I think that they probably only eat bat when like they couldn't catch any fish for like multiple days, right? And
Isn't
so
it easier to catch a fish than a bat? Bats
uh,
fly.
I mean, the point is that people will go and be like, "Did you know that they eat like this crazy thing there?" And the truth is, they probably don't eat it that often, you know. So like,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
don't want to be like they eat bat in Palau. Like, yeah, they have it a little bit, um, but it like for example, in my hometown,
Yeah.
I grew up in Indiana, and we have
Uh-huh.
cow brain sandwiches. Like that's what we're famous for.
What?
Yeah,
That
but I've
sounds
only
delicious.
but in my life, I've had like two. Like it's not like we're constantly eating those.
Yeah, I had sheep's brain in Lebanon, and then when I was in a village in India, we had worms, I think. So it's not. You're right. It's not the fact that they eat worms all the time. It's just that it's one of the only sources of protein that they have. They also ate and chutney, which is actually really good.
You know, I also think it's like whatever a tourist will pay for, they'll give you. You know,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
if you came, if you told me you
here's
would eat
bag of
salmon,
onions for $2 US.
yeah, exactly. Like I mean, I would lie and be like, yeah, like we eat paper. Like if you would pay me to give it to you.
Yeah, tourists sometimes just think it's an experience, like in inverted commas. Okay, so North Korea, we've talked about Yemen. That's the other image that I have. There's an image of you in Malta next to a huge white stone. Beautiful scenery.
Yeah. So Malta was my final country. So I decided to um, like pick a place that would be fun for some friends and family to come. So like I had four friends fly in and my parents, and we just had like this great party celebrating the end to this like crazy journey. And Malta is a perfect spot because it's a fun place. Like we are able to like have a really fun party to celebrate, but it's also really historical. So there's lots to go and see. Um, I'm not entirely sure what that stone
Looks
is.
like a tombstone.
Yeah, I think it was like where one of the first like generals or governors or something. Um, I think it's his tomb.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
pretty Mediterranean views.
Yeah, it is. It does look very Mediterranean. Yeah. Okay, let's swing back to Asia and Timor Leste. There's this beautiful shot of I'm assuming it's you facing the ocean.
That's my friend. I took the shot.
Okay.
I think. Let me see which one it is. Facing.
Yeah, there's clouds. There's two ships in the horizon, and he's on a very wet beach.
Yeah, that's my buddy. And so I love Timor Leste. I was really lucky. Like, I called a student who used to go to my boarding school. I didn't know him, but we went to the same school, and he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, he made his brother be my tour guide for the whole week, and like we went all around, and like it was just, I felt so incredibly welcomed, and it's so gorgeous, and there's so few people, like beaches like that. If it was in Spain, it would be so crowded, but here we were the only.
Yeah. They call Timor-Leste the land without tourists.
Yeah, I mean that's sad. Like hopefully, like there's a balance, right? Like you want more than zero, but you don't want too many that it becomes like diluted.
They speak Portuguese there, right?
Yeah, so they speak. So it was a Portuguese colony for a long time. Then it was occupied by Indonesia. So there's kind of like the local Bahasa or whatever they like speak.
Do you speak Bahasa?
No. There's like Timorese, and then English and Portuguese is kind of like what the collection of languages there.
Okay, let's go to another place that I do want to go, but it's gonna cost me $250 USD a day. Bhutan. Yeah, but this is a picture that I would not believe is Bhutan. I would think you're in a 5-star hotel in Abu Dhabi.
Well, so I'm.
Where are you? Where are you in Bhutan? Where is this? Where is this fancy place?
I'm in the Meridian in Bhutan. So
there's a Meridian in Bhutan?
There's 2. So that was.
Oh, you were staying in the Meridian in Bhutan? How did that depart from the experience of going to a place where Bhutan is all about not celebrating money, right? They're about being humble. And what is their currency? Is happiness their currency? Am I getting that right?
No, they have a like not measuring GDP, but measuring like not measuring finances, but measuring gross national happiness and like kind of the general.
There you go. Yes. Yes.
I was really lucky for 2 reasons in Bhutan. Like one was that I ended up going as an invited guest of a friend of mine, so I didn't have to pay the $200 a day. And
so that's a hack. If you have a friend in Bhutan, get him to invite you, and you do not have to pay the $250 US, which means you don't get a guide though.
Correct. And
but he was your guide. He was your guide.
Yeah. So like she was my guide, and I had to like they have to like write a paper, or like not paper, but they have to promise that they will be your guide and show you around. And it's not just like, it can't just be a random person you meet. Like we had to submit our high school transcripts to show that we went to school at the same time.
All right. So I can't just randomly go on. Is that Facebook in Bhutan?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, okay. So I can just randomly just meet somebody online and say, hey, why don't you just recommend me to come to Bhutan? I would love to go to Bhutan though. It's a lot of my friends have gone there on like group tours. Apparently it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, and there's flights from Singapore.
There are direct flights from Singapore. But I think it's cheaper to go from Bangkok, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true as well.
Yeah. So are you next to a volcano in Turkmenistan?
So that's the Darvaza gas crater, also known as the Gates of Hell. So it was a gas rig that was like when the Soviet when Turkmenistan was part of the Soviet Union, and the gas rig like broke, and so they thought they could burn it, and that the reserves would burn off like in a month or something, and it's been burning for like 50 years. So
50 years.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's why they call it the Gates of Hell. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, but it's cool.
You don't look scared at all here in this picture.
Well, I pretend I pretty well.
Okay, so last one is Iraq. I think we spoke a little bit about Iraq. There's a picture of you perch on a tank, wearing sandals. Very nice.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much. Like that's not a. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of like military history in Iraq.
Yeah.
Since
94, even before 94.
Yeah, I mean it's there's the Iran Iraq, there's the Gulf War, there's like the American invasion, there's the ISIS. So there's so that was like at a museum. It was like kind of like a silly thing. There's another one where I'm like lying suggestively over what's it called, like the gun part of the tank, you know, to be like
Is there?
War. I don't think it's in the folder. Inappropriate. But
I'm trying to look for it on Instagram. I don't think it's there either.
No, but it's like, you know,
Okay.
there's so I think it's just kind of like a striking image. And then like you can from that discuss like the history of the place. And the one thing that I'm like always nervous to do with that stuff is like I don't want anybody to think like it's cool, because like ideally that wouldn't exist or have to exist. And actually there was in that museum there was some art made out of bombs and art made out of guns, and at one point it said these guns were neither made for us nor did we want to use them. And I thought that was like really interesting, is saying like
beauty from violence. Yeah, I mean it's horrible. I watch a lot of documentaries. I was actually supposed to go to Beirut a couple of years ago because I have an uncle there, and I think it was 2012, and there was a taxi bomb right next to where I was supposed to be at. That canceled my trip very fast. Middle East has a lot of issues, but I think it has a lot of beauty as well, which people tend to overlook, because they kind of get inundated with a lot of the news of, you know, bombing here, bombing there, missile here. But I think you've proven definitely that anyone with enough determination can go to anywhere in the Middle East, especially the Middle East, because you've been to Kabul and you've been to Yemen, and I'm very impressed with the fact you've been to Yemen recently. I mean, recently. It's not an easy place to get to. So I think the question I want to ask is, all these countries, all these photos, all these stories, how has this defined you as a person?
So I think it's such a hard question to answer, because I've been traveling for I'm so young and I've traveled for so many years already that it's like my entire life. So it's like saying, how have I changed from 16 to 28, right? Like in so many ways. But I think the main like lessons I've learned is, one is an appreciation. So I think I really understand the world in a holistic way, and I understand the different ways that lives are lived, and so I appreciate the one that I am so lucky to live. I think I've also like a second lesson is just about how similar so many people are. Like there's not a single person that I can't connect with, right? So like when I met you, it was like we were instantly able to talk about Yemen, right? And
yeah,
that's really cool. But like if you introduce me to your Bulgarian friend, I can talk to her about Bulgaria. If you introduce me to your like friend from Colombia, I can talk to them. And so there's you know, there's that connection with every single person. But at the end of the day, like we all have those connections anyway. Like we all are so similar, and yet we look at the things that divide us too much. And so I've learned to focus on the similarities, and then only after I feel connected with someone do I like look at the differences and try and learn from them.
Has your experiences defined your photography? So has it changed in any way from country 1 to country 193? Do you focus on different things?
Yeah, I think that it's really nice to go through a city or through a day like with the lens of a camera and thinking about how to capture beauty and like what story you can tell. It's also then interesting like after the fact to like look through the images and say, okay, I want to say X. What image will be best to like convey that? And then it's also fun to think about, okay, how does the audience respond? So, you know, they like it much more if you're in the photo. So like, how do I make that happen? Yeah, I mean, so it's definitely changed. Like I'm thinking more about the audience. I'm thinking more about like, how can it be beautiful? I'm thinking more about what does each image represent?
So you tend to stay away from portraiture of other people. So I'm going through your Instagram, and it's essentially either pictures of you or like the landscape. Is there a reason for that? Like, do you use the pictures of the landscape to tell a more deeper story?
Well, it's also that I kind of feel like it's such a personal thing if somebody's sharing their story with me and sharing their image with me, and then I don't necessarily feel like permission to like show that to so many others. Um, like I will never take a photo of somebody without asking if their face is in it. Like that girl in Afghanistan that you referenced, I didn't ask her, but like I'm like very protective of like people's identity, and like especially because I have somewhat of a platform. Like I don't want to put somebody, especially a child, up, without permission. And then I also like, even if I ask someone to take a photo, there's a difference between them knowing that I'm taking the photo and knowing that thousands of people will see it.
Okay. So how would you talk to somebody who wants to do what you do? Is the bravery to confront, because you went to an international school, so you had the benefit of knowing a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So what if somebody just read your story and said, you know what, I want to do what Sal did, but I don't think I have that bravery. Do you think that bravery is earned from every place that you visit? Do you visit a hard place first, like a harder place first, like some place that is more beyond? If you're a city boy, would you go to somewhere that is the polar opposite first?
So the question I always ask people when they say that they want to go to every country is, I just say, why? Like you can't, if it can't just be to do it.
Yeah.
Like you have to have, like, so for me, I study and I work in economic development and identity. So I'm interested in learning about the way people view themselves and the way we view them and the way that economies work or don't. So in every single country that I went to, like I'm exploring that stuff. Then I also have like personal interests of like, I like, sunsets or whatever. So if somebody tells me they want to go just to get all the stamps, that's fine, because that's what they want to do. But for me, that wasn't the motivation. If somebody says that they want to go, to like hear every language, that's cool. If somebody wants to like play football in every country, or like I think like I loved praying in every single Muslim country. So like that would be like, if someone says they want to go see the best mosque in every Muslim country, like that would be a really cool thing. But it's whatever you want. And so I would just hope that people travel in the way that they want to, because the biggest mistake you can make is to travel like for no reason at all, because then you're not going to get anything out of it.
What would you say to, and there is a difference, a woman who wants to do what you do because she wants to experience the world spiritually, because it's she wants to do a solo travel, it would be less safe for her, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest like dehumanized group in the world is women. And so you're going to be putting yourself in situations that might be more severe. And I think that we are all traveling with like our identities on our sleeves, right?
Yep.
And some of those identities give us benefits, and some of those give us potential harm. And I think we just need to be like aware of and conscious of it. I don't think it's the place of a traveler to be an activist entirely. Like I don't think they should like I think like we should be like respectful,
observe and respect.
Yeah. And so like for example, if you are I don't know, like if you're a big like drug user and you go to a country and you're like, oh, like marijuana should be legal, I'm gonna smoke a joint, like no, like that's not smart. Like
that's dumb. That's dumb.
So, like, and but then that can also be extended to like, if you're in a place where like for example, when I'm somewhere that doesn't like another country, I'm not gonna go screaming that I've been there, right? Like I'm not gonna tell you about your enemy, right? Like, or if and then there's some things like we can't, like identities that we can't hide, like gender and race and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
We just need to be aware of how we will be responded to based on that. So like try and be as safe as you can, and travel with other people or whatever. Like, and it's like I know when I'm in a village in Africa that I'm going to stand out same as when I'm in a village in Asia, right? Like people are going to like notice me, and that means some stuff, right? You just have to respond.
Okay. What do you think of Singapore during your visit?
I love Singapore. I've been 4 times.
4 times.
Yeah.
How do you know what is his name? That guy?
Amman.
Arman, yes. How do you know Arman?
We had communicated on Instagram actually. Like we had just talked about travel and stuff because he's a big traveler too.
Yeah.
And so then it was fun to meet. And I'm actually going to see him next month as well. So
Whereabouts?
in Thailand.
Oh, I'm going to Thailand on Friday for work, unfortunately, but I'll still be there. I'm worried about the air quality though, because I'm hearing people are coughing up blood, and I'm an asthmatic.
Oh God.
Yeah, and so and there might be a military coup somewhere this week.
What?
Yeah.
How can you know that? If you know that, then I don't think there's going to be one.
There might be. So you know the world of Twitter, right? So there's a lot of expats in Bangkok who are reporting strange military movements in and around town. And it happened the same 2015 where they had an actual coup, and the same events were happening. Like the military suddenly had exercise because there was a lot of announcements on politics. They recently announced that one of the princesses was running for parliament, and then the king said no, and then suddenly the militaries are doing exercises. So I mean, I think as a tourist you're fine. Just don't.
Right.
I think the lesson is just don't do anything stupid in another country. Just be respectful. If you think things are going to happen, just stay in your hotel and just relax.
Yeah, and if you want to make a change, do it through proper channels.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, you wouldn't go to a remote village in Pakistan to champion women's rights, because that would not go down well. I think you need to do it the right way. And I actually, in a nice segue, I like what's happening in. I've actually liked what's happened in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and the more progressive states in the UAE as opposed to, for example, Saudi Arabia. I think they just recently made. I don't want to go into a spiel here, but they recently made driving legal for women in Saudi Arabia.
We've had it forever.
Yes, exactly, right? So I like the progressiveness of when I went to Abu Dhabi, when I went to Dubai. Yes, Dubai was a bit of a tinsel town. It reminded me a little bit of Vegas, but I felt safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's the safest place in the world. It's Abu Dhabi is my favorite place. I've lived here for 8 years, and I've been everywhere, and this is the one that I've chosen. And it's so safe. It's it is progressing incredibly all the time. From the 8 years I've been here, I've seen it change so much. It knows what its problems are. It knows that it isn't perfect, but it's trying to get better. And that's what's exciting, is that momentum. And what's sad though is it's very misunderstood.
It is.
Sometimes we get weird gender stuff put in the media, and there are gender problems here, as there are gender problems all over the world, and maybe ours are more severe in some ways. But our federal national council is now 50% women. Our cabinet is 1/3 women compared to 1/5 in the UK and in the US. We have so many female leaders. We have more female graduates. There's so many good things that are ignored because people, unfortunately, there's still views of so many different countries that are colonial and that are racist, and so those need to be fought against. And that's kind of a big part of what I do on Instagram, is that I want to show you the beautiful places and the beautiful people and the beautiful stories from these spots you've either not heard about or you think badly.
Definitely, man. That's the story. That's how you define yourself. That's what I really like, because as an Arab man, if I tell people about even a place like Oman, they'll be saying "Oh, Oman's so dangerous," it's not next to Yemen. Oman is a beautiful, beautiful country with some great coffee, and I've been there a few times. And it's just that we need more people like you to share beautiful stories, to kind of dispel against the avalanche of bad press that the Arabs are getting for the past couple of, I don't know, decades. Yeah, and and it's a pity because Morocco, Egypt, Oman, even Yemen, man. Yemen is a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place, and I hope as a person born in Hadramaut, I hope that one day all this goes away, and then peace in the Middle East, man. Inshallah, for sure. We are coming to the end of the 1 hour podcast, and I think I will leave the last 2 minutes Obviously, we're gonna be shouting out to our users who are on PIXERF, who are photographers, enthusiasts, and we're gonna be on YouTube, and we're gonna be on Spotify and iTunes, I think. So,
Nice.
is there any message? Is there anything that you want to say to our listeners before we sign off?
I just say that like I always respond to every message on Instagram, to every comment on YouTube. Like I love to have these conversations with everybody.
Yeah.
They'll reach out to me, and
I will
yeah.
I will tag Sal's Instagram handle on this podcast. So this is going to be a video podcast, so we're going to show some of the images as well. So they will also see. Can I put your Gmail as well, because it's on your Instagram?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, yeah, I'll put your Gmail as well. Thanks so much, man. You're in Abu Dhabi. I might be going to Abu Dhabi soon. So if I'm ever down in your hood, I will hit you up, and then we can go out for a nice tea and a. Do they have shisha there in Abu Dhabi? Is it still around?
They do. I don't partake, but I will watch you and root for you as you do.
All right, man. Thanks so much for taking an hour of your time, and
Yeah, sure.
and we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, you as well.
Bye.